Thought Bubble Audio.
Look, up in the sky!
You will never find the more wretched hive of scum and villainy.
Welcome to Beer with Geeks with Tim and Frank.
Who are you?
I'm Batman.
I am Iron Man.
Your friendly neighborhood Spider-Man.
Hi, Christopher. I'm Nero.
My name is Inigo Montoya.
You're a wizard, Harry.
A couple of guys with a couple of beers and a whole lot of pop culture nostalgia.
Make it so, number one.
Ladies and gentlemen, the Beatles.
Named the dog Indiana.
Life finds a way.
I am serious. And don't call me Shirley.
Now sit back and crack open a cold one, because it's time for Beer with Geeks.
It comes in paints.
Shaken, not stirred.
Great Scott!
I was way off. I knew it started with an S, though.
Hi, and welcome to Beer with Geeks, where two geeks geek out with beer. I'm Tim, and with me, as always, actually, one could say he's with me all along. It's Frank. How are you today?
I'm pretty good. How are you, Tim?
I'm doing well. I'm doing quite well.
Good.
It's nice
Now,
to see you, as always. Nice
it's-
to taste you and hear you and smell you and all the other senses that we may or may not use during the course of this podcast.
Please don't use some of those. Yeah, that's
Okay.
okay. I look for. Look, I just want to let you know that just half of the running time of this episode will be credits. Just want to put that out there up front.
Oh, absolutely.
Let you
Sure,
know.
absolutely.
The
Yeah.
second half of this episode will say, "Please stand by," and then there'll just be credits for 20 minutes.
I mean, that's fine. I mean, the first half is, it takes so long to actually get us to talk in the first place. Our intro is so long. It's like that in reverse for Beer with Geeks.
It's true.
Frank, what are you drinking this evening?
I am drinking a Ragged Island Old Boys Vienna-Style lager.
Ooh, that sounds delicious.
It's great. It's pretty excellent. I actually bought this. I bought this a week or so ago, and this is the last one. But it's a very it's sort of a toasted lager, Vienna style lager. I'm not familiar with Ragged Island. They are new to me. They're from Norwood, Massachusetts. But this is quite a good Vienna style lager, and the reason I picked it up, Tim, is because are you familiar with Rick Steves, the guy from PBS who does the travel shows?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Yes,
sort of like
I
a
am.
dad looking guy with the glasses and everything. He's been around forever, and he does these travel. He travels around Europe primarily. And during the pandemic, he hasn't been able to travel, obviously, make his travel shows, and he runs a travel company, and they haven't been able to do their thing. So what he's done during the pandemic, and I only just recently found out about this, is on Mondays, he gets on Zoom and does basically a live webinar on Zoom that you can sign up and join for free. And he just plays clips from like some of his favorite episodes of his shows, and like he finds some kind of a theme. So in this case, it was European cities that have to do with music. So like the places where like Mozart and Bach and these people were born, and it was just the clips from all the shows where he happened to go to one of those cities. So it's like he mixes and matches, like, oh, here's the one from Vienna, here's the one from Salzburg, whatever. And so I was like, well, if I'm watching something where we're going to be in Vienna, I need like I wanted a beer that matched the locale that we were going to be watching.
Of course.
So I picked up this Vienna style lager for exactly that reason, and I've been enjoying it for the last week or so.
I love that. I do that sometimes, actually. I'll be like, oh, we're having spaghetti and meatball tonight? Oh, then then I must have, I must have a Peroni, or
pairing, right?
We're enjoying grape leaves and like some kibbe or some lamb. Oh, then I must have a Mythos or something like that. Which is a very just okay beer that you can get in Greece.
Sure, but it's it's like getting a Tecate or a Sol or something in Mexico.
Right?
Like,
yeah,
it's just okay, but it's the beer of the place.
That's right. I love having the beer of the place. I'm having a Hoegaarden, which is something that I have had a while ago. Hoegaarden was the first legal beer that I drank abroad. Like
Nice.
I should say when I was 21, I should say. So like when I was 18, my first one, and I was abroad, my first one was a Guinness in Ireland, which I think I've spoken of a few times before, which is great. But a Hoegaarden was I think my first one abroad
Nice.
When I was 21, I was in Paris, which is probably not the place to get a Hoegaarden, but you know what? It was delicious, and continues to be so.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. That's awesome. That's a fun memory to have. Like the first time that you weren't looking over your shoulder and then being like, oh wait, no, it's legal here. It's fine.
It's fine. It's actually legal everywhere for me.
It's legal.
Now. Okay,
yeah,
great.
Now I'm legal everywhere. Great. All right.
Yeah, I'm still not looking over my shoulder though. It is fun when you're that age and you're like, like, oh, like all right, I can do this. It's like driving somewhere for the first time with your license or whatever. Like, oh, no one's going to tell me to slow down except for me. I'm going too fast.
You know who else was going too fast, Tim? Wanda.
Wanda. Wanda Sykes, Wishbone's neighbor. Wanda Maximoff was going a regular speed. Quicksilver was probably going a little too fast. Her brother Pietro. Frank, let's talk WandaVision, shall we? Because it's over, and and everyone is sad about it. Most people are sad about it.
Yes. Spoilers, by the way, for WandaVision. There will be hella spoilers for the entire season. So if you have not watched it.
Exactly. Starting now, can you believe that Ralph was Mephisto? Because RALPH and Mephisto, MEPH, obviously they're the same. Exactly. PH, they were, they checked the levels in the chlorinated pool. PH, can you believe it? Anyway, also
all that for a boner joke.
Indeed. Can you believe that Ian McKellen and Michael Fassbender showed up at the same time? Like, I don't know which one was supposed to be Magneto and which one wasn't, Frank.
I guess we'll find out in WandaVision 2, Electric Boogaloo.
Exactly.
But until then, I don't know.
I don't know. And also that astrophysicist, Frank, I really thought it was going to be Reed Richards, and it turned out it was Reed Richards.
I know. John Krasinski was amazing.
He was amazing, even though Reed Richards really isn't just an astrophysicist. And his movie isn't even written yet. That's fine.
That's okay.
It's all good. It's fine. Frank, I had to get all those things off my chest.
Not to gloat or anything.
I had to get all those things off my chest because none of those things happened, and I'm so happy they didn't.
Yeah.
I'm so happy they didn't. No, I think I sent you this article. No, Damon, friend of the show, sent us this article from Collider.
Yes.
It was a piece of satire. Like, obviously, Iron Man 2 is everyone's favorite Marvel movie because it gives you all the setup and all these new characters, and it's just the best, and it barely has its own story. Blah, blah, blah.
Man.
Yeah. Anyway, let's talk what actually happened in WandaVision, Frank. Yeah. Wanda and Vision. Wanda and Vision. Wanda's Vision. WandaVision.
So,
television. Great title.
I want to give you props right off the bat because we talked before WandaVision started, and you had shared a theory. I don't remember if I think we talked off air. I think it was just the two of us. I don't think this was on the podcast. Though someone will correct me if I'm wrong. And you had said that your thinking and your thinking was that it would be Wanda creating this reality of some kind, and that she's like struggling to hold it together, and that the sitcom thing was the sort of the surface level, like the conceit, and that over time we would see that the reason that we were progressing through the decades, as we had seen in the trailers, was that it was that world unraveling, and she couldn't keep it all together. She couldn't keep this fake reality where Vision's still alive and everything. She couldn't keep it consistently together, and that's how things started to unravel. And you were pretty on point about that. You were pretty damn on point. Yeah. No, gloat, please, dude. Like, take a moment. Do a victory lap because you were right.
Yeah. No. Anyway. No, you're right. Right from the start. Pretty much when they announced the show, and they were like, "Okay, this is the title, and it's going to be like a thing through the sitcoms, and Vision's there," and I was like, yeah, all right, well, okay, so Wanda creates fake reality, and it's grief, and she can't hold it together, and she's creating sitcoms instead of, like, real life because it's a little easier to hold together because she's trying to create the perfect Americana, but she only knows about that because of television because she was raised in Sokovia, and boom, that's exactly what we watched.
That's where they went.
But you know what? But I only think that I only knew that because I knew that, like, Wanda in the comics, Wanda in her grief does create a false reality, because of Vision's death, she creates fake children and, end up becoming real children and blah, 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 all the way through. And I was like, oh, so they're doing House of M, like without that, but instead of like no more mutants it's a totally alternative reality. It's a condensed version of that, which is also the MCU's kind of thing, right? They're all about condensing the big story and making it okay for the MCU showcase Civil War.
I was going to say, see Civil War, right?
Yeah,
right.
So, yeah, no, I think I might have called it in the investors meeting or something like that. It might have been our podcast about that. I actually might have spoken about it on the air.
That may have been it. Yeah, that tracks. Yeah, but no, I just wanted to give you that shout out right up front because you totally nailed that one. So, as I was watching the show, I'm used to you being pretty spot on about a lot of your predictions because you're usually pretty good at these kinds of things. But I was just amazed as it was going along. I was like, but it can't be like exactly what Tim said. Like, I'm sure it'll be like a version of that. It'll be like close to it, but not exactly. Because like usually, if we make a guess, it's not going to be 100% right, but maybe we'll be like, oh, see, I was kind of right about that. That's cool. Or, when you on Supergirl, you famously called Martian Manhunter like months in advance.
It was the pilot episode. His eyes glowed red, and I was like, that's Martian
Manhunter. And damn if you weren't right. So it's you were exactly spot on with this one. So props for that. I thought this show did such a good job of pulling in fans from, and maybe I'm sure the MCU has always had a very diverse fan base, but I feel like it really pulled in people who are not necessarily MCU fans on this one, or at least people who are not like long-standing MCU fans who came in to watch this show because it was on Disney Plus and it was being pushed so hard because it looked interesting that they were doing this TV genre sort of send up. And I'm sure to some extent it was like, oh, and that's about superheroes, cool. But like, I don't feel like the superhero aspect is what pulled a lot of new viewers into this one, and that includes my wife, she's seen one Marvel movie. She saw Iron Man 2, when it came out.
The best one.
The best one, as we just discussed. Yeah. She can attest it's the best one. She saw it like by accident. Probably, I think she was like on a date or something. And she was like, yeah, sure, I guess I'll watch it. I don't care. When she was like in college.
I was going to say not a date with you.
Not with me. This
we should clarify.
Predates me. Yes. Yeah. So like, but she absolutely was hooked from episode 1. She saw the promo during The Bachelor, and texted me and was like, are you going to watch this WandaVision thing? This looks interesting. And I was like, you're interested in that? Really? Okay. Yeah. I mean, yes, I was going to watch it either way, but absolutely let's watch it together. And she was hooked from episode 1, like was in the memes, was in WandaVision TikTok, was like, she was deep. She has been deep in WandaVision fandom, in subreddit, all of it, and has been just loving it. And, every week for the last several weeks, it's been like, oh, it's almost Friday. You know what that means? WandaVision. That's been like the mantra in our household. So it's been a very interesting experience for me coming in as a comics fan, as a Marvel fan, and then her coming at it from a completely different point of view, and me trying to figure out what is the sort of minimum I need to give her for her to understand what's happening. And I was very intentional to give her as little as possible. You gave me some, you watched the episode a few hours before I did. And so the pilot, I mean, and, you gave me the advice, like, give her like as little as you can, like just say like, Wanda is this person, Vision is a robot, they're in love, they have powers. That's it.
Yep.
That's it.
WandaVision did a great job at giving you details like as a surprise if you didn't know them, but not making you feel like you're missing something. The only exception I think might be the blip, right? Would probably be the one that like needed to be explained a little bit.
And Pietro, I would argue too.
Yeah, but Pietro, even they give you a couple of episodes of, oh well, she had a brother and he died, and she had a brother, and you know what I mean. Like they do that a couple of times. They don't give you the whole context for it, especially like her like walk or like her Christmas Carol episode where she kind of like goes through her past with Agatha, who was there all along, by the way. like you don't get the significance of like the Stark bomb dropping and then not exploding.
Yes.
If you don't remember that that's a thing from Age of Ultron, right? So there's stuff for everybody, but it does a good job at like, I'm thinking of like the first time you see Vision dead and like you're like, whoa, like if you've never said, I mean, you speak to this for your wife's experience in watching it, but you see that and you're like, well, I know why he looks like that, but now it's a big old mystery. Like what's
it's
happening.
like, why is there a hole in his head?
But
like,
it's not like you feel like I'm missing something. It's more like I want to know I want to solve the mystery, not shoot, I'm missing a piece of information that I needed before.
You're absolutely right. They did that so well with this show, where there were plenty of things that if you are a fan, you pick up on them, but if you're not a fan, you don't feel left out. You don't have FOMO about it. In the case of like, why is there a hole in Vision's head? You feel like it's a mystery that they're planting a seed and you're going to get an answer to it later. So you don't feel like, what is this fan service that I don't get? You feel like, ooh, what's that about? I can't wait till they reveal that, right? Mm-hmm. And the one, I would say, the only couple, I think the blip is one, and I think not so much Pietro existing, because you're right, they explained that, but the fact that it was a different actor, you weren't going to get the same, like, when he showed up, you weren't going to understand, like, you had to know not just what happened in the MCU, you had to understand, well, there was a Fox owned the X-Men and Disney didn't have, like, you had to understand that to sort of, but it didn't take away from it if you didn't know that.
That's true. Yes and no on the Fox and the X-Men thing. So I think you had to know what Quicksilver or Pietro looked like in Age of Ultron, right? For it to have a significance that he's a different actor.
Yes.
Right? Because, Darcy even says like, oh, she recast Pietro, right? So she, as the audience, is telling you like, all right, like this is not her brother. This is not Pietro. Because they do not dive into Evan Peters also being the same character in the X-Men franchise, blah, blah, blah. I don't think that's actually necessary information. For us, it adds, it's an Easter egg and also kind of a middle finger Mandarin twist kind of thing.
Yeah.
We're going to get this thing you love and give you a not as good version of it at the end, right? That was a bit of a Mandarin twist at the end. But from Disney's perspective, or even just Marvel's perspective, like I can completely get behind their decision to not want to like link themselves, one, to the X-Men so soon, but two, to a different company's version of the X-Men that has middling success at best at that point by the time that Evan Peters joins as that character. Right.
Right.
So there's like a lot of explaining to do. And so it's really more of like I felt this was more like a Arrowverse thing where they're like, hey, Helen Slater was Supergirl. Now she's Supergirl's mom.
Okay.
It felt more like that to me by the end.
Yeah.
We as fans, as comic fans, are like, oh, but that's Evan Peters, and he was in the X-Men, and it is the same character.
Sure.
And then we get the chart, and then we get the things, and we got to put it all together. And I'm like, we do that to ourselves. The show doesn't even come close to intonating that that's what it's going to do, apart from having him show up.
Sure. And
I don't know if that's a fault of the show or if that's a fault of us.
That's fair. I will say. You talk about like mystery, right? Like you talk about like the hole in Vision's head and like, oh, what's the mystery? They laid out the mystery around Agatha really nicely, where it was clear that there was something different about her, but you couldn't quite put your finger on it. There was that moment where she and the other neighbor, like he was had his chainsaw out and he was cutting the wall, and you're like, what's going? Vision was even like, what's happening? What's going on? And Agnes was clearly like, nothing. Don't worry about it. It's fine. Everything's fine here. Just go back. Go back to your house. It's fine. They made it clear with things like that there was something off about her, but they
also play it up like Agnes plays it up in a way that makes you think that they know what's happening.
Yes.
And like it's Wanda's fault. The show does a really good job at oscillating between it's Wanda's fault. Maybe it's Agatha's fault. Maybe it's no one's fault. Maybe it's Grief's fault. Maybe it's Hayward's fault. It does this nice thing where like
maybe it's the
Wanda's
ship of
fault.
Theseus's fault.
It is the ship of Theseus's fault. I think that was my favorite scene. One like top 5 vision on vision philosophy battle. Like that was the Vision v Vision philosophy.
That was pretty great. That was pretty well done.
It was a good use of the ship of Theseus, one, because it's a great philosophical debate. But the show kind of dives into a few philosophical things, right? Like it's the WandaVision's very much allegory of the cave, right? You have, but it's Wanda creating her own cave instead of being in I can't think of the right word, ignorance. Like she like willfully creates her own because she forgets and then has to remember, right? Like she goes through it all over again. She doesn't even know what's happening by the time when the show starts, when it flips back to the Dick Van Dyke Show at the like where we start, and she has to reemerge out of her own cave, which is basically the giant dome. And it's really smart. It's a good like philosophy 101. Let's pull this apart for a couple of different reasons, kind of thing.
Yes, it's so well done. The fact that she didn't know what was going on at the beginning really threw me for a loop, because at the very start I was like, oh, I guess Tim's not right if she's not aware of what's happening. Like it didn't even really occur to me that like maybe she created such a strong false reality that even she forgot the truth for part of it, like, so that was such a good way to throw us off the scent at the beginning.
Actually, it's with what I thought was interesting with the movement of the sitcoms from Dick Van Dyke to Bewitched to random 70s show to kind of, it was very specific at the beginning. Like it was clearly the Dick Van Dyke Show. The house was modeled, like the house was built the same way. Bewitched was built the same way. And
Can I tell you a
Yes.
fun tidbit about Bewitched? They
Yes.
shot those first couple episodes. The residential area where their house is on the same area of the Warner Brothers backlot that Bewitched and a bunch of other shows were actually shot.
Awesome.
So some of the houses you see on that block, I don't think the house they live in, but some of the other houses you see in that block have been there since like the 30s, and they've been in tons of TV and movies that have been shot on that backlot. The downtown area was shot on a Disney lot. But but that part was shot on the Warner Brothers lot, and I thought that was so cool. That was such a cool piece of trivia. Anyway, sorry, I had to.
That's good.
Sorry to
No,
interrupt,
but
but I had to interject with that.
No, that's a great interjection, and like that's part of the big love letter to sitcoms and everything like that. But I like the progression of the sitcoms. It's very meta. It's a very aware of what it's doing, because there's an ignorance to early sitcoms, like, oh, we're in this wild and wacky situation and we're going to get out of it in 22 minutes. And through each progressive season, we start to self-reference or ourselves. It's a more of a direct reflection of what the world is like, as opposed to the kind of the fairy tale hijinks of the 50s and 60s.
Sure.
And so by the time that we get to the end of the show, we're not even in sitcom land anymore, right? And it's also less evident what the sitcom is supposed to be referencing. Like if you notice, like it's very hardcore Dick Van Dyke. By the time you get to the modern day with its Modern Family and The Office, it's like a mix of all of these different things, but it's never quite any of those. Because we start, I mean, it may also be kind of a testament to modern television or sitcoms, and it's all just kind of the same, isn't it?
To a point, yeah. But it almost feels like at the beginning they were like, we're going to do the Dick Van Dyke episode, and then we're going to do the Bewitched episode, and then we're going to do the by the time you got to like the 70s, they were like, oh shoot, we're running out of, okay, let's throw a couple of things in here. It's a little bit Brady Bunch, it's a little bit this, a little bit that.
That's right. But it's also a time that we have more information.
That's right.
So the sitcom world is unraveling, so it's not as coherent because you've got a mixture of all these different types of sitcoms. So it's really, really smart. I loved the first 2 episodes, the Dick Van Dyke and Bewitched, because I grew up watching those shows. Like, people are like, "Did you watch Hey Arnold growing up?" I'm like, "No, I watched the Dick Van Dyke Show every night, and I Love Lucy and Bewitched and I Dream of Jeannie and Green Acres and The Munsters and like all this stuff." So
Heck yes.
when people were like talking about Agatha all along, and they're like, "I've never heard of The Munsters before," I'm like dying inside.
Like, what?
So I'm like,
where were you?
Where were you?
What's wrong
I mean,
with
I
you?
wasn't alive, and I know about The Munsters.
Right.
I watched them around Halloween. They're still hilarious.
Yes.
They're so good. They're still so good. But I loved those episodes, and because I love old television, and I know that if you didn't know Dick Van Dyke Show or Bewitched, you didn't get what they were doing the same way that I found that people got what they were doing by episode 3.
Yeah.
Everyone's like, it's a slow start. Is it a slow start because there are no explosions, or is it a slow start because you've never seen the Dick Van Dyke Show?
Honestly, yes. Wow, that is such a good sorry to be harsh, but like that's so true. Like is it feel slow because you're just not used to like the pace of this kind of media? Like, are you just not familiar with this kind of storytelling and that's why it feels slow?
Mm-hmm. I think so. I think it's part of it. And so there's a bit of it's very postmodern. It's so self-reflecting on itself, and it's, it's probably, in some ways, it's the very first of its kind that I'm sure many people actually got to experience, which is why I think it's taken people so much. Because like for us, we're watching this and going, wow, Marvel did something really interesting that I've seen a bit before in other places, but I've never seen it done with superheroes. And so like I love that it's going in this direction. But for some people, like for it to be a show and in the middle of a battle for them to stop and be like, "So, the ship of Theseus, let's talk about it."
Yes. Yeah.
That's kind of a big deal. And I love that it's indirectly exposing people to maybe smarter television than just things go boom.
Yeah.
Because I actually thought the end like could have done without the battle. Like it felt like the mind games that Agatha was playing didn't actually merit the necessity of the fight at the end. The Vision felt okay. The Vision stuff felt okay, but the Agatha stuff felt like I don't feel like I actually needed to see that fight. The Battle of the Minds was way more interesting than I'm gonna shoot some magic at you. Though I did love Wanda using runes for the first time. I got
that
as
was
a
cool.
comic fan, it was very cool. But I thought it felt like a tonal shift from what I was watching for 9 episodes.
I agree with you on that. I agree. I could have done without some of that. I could have maybe a little bit less of it, a little more of a condensed version of some of that, of the witch fights. But I'm also not one for like witchcraft as a storytelling device. Like it's not really my thing.
No, you prefer the
I've,
rocket launchers on Iron Man's armor to Doctor Strange's, Ember sword, or whatever.
Now, Doctor Strange, I can get down with some of it, but it's the I don't know. It's like the whole like ancient witchcraft stuff of like, I've talked a lot about how much I love Smallville on this show, but the season that I dislike the most probably is the one with all the witches.
Well, that's because it was poorly written. That has nothing to do with magic whatsoever. That is just bad.
No,
that was just bad writing.
It was bad writing. It was bad writing, and thank you for saying that because I feel like a lot of people are like, "What are you talking about? The season's great." It's not great. It's not just that the writing was bad. It's that I wasn't captivated by that kind of a story doesn't really catch my attention in the same way.
Mm-hmm.
Like Harry Potter got my attention just enough because the characters were cool and compelling and interesting and relatable. But if it weren't for that, if it was just like a story about a little wizard boy and it didn't have the rest going for it, I probably wouldn't have gone for it.
Sure. I think you could make that a case about almost anything though, right? Because, like we only care about superheroes because we find them interesting characters.
Yeah. Yes.
And like my brain doesn't necessarily turn off when they like start fighting, but I'm like, but to me, that is probably the least interesting part about superheroes to me.
Yes.
As an adult, like I like, okay, cool, you're fighting. That's fine. Like that's part of it. And I enjoy it for what it is, but it's not intellectually stimulating or challenging.
No,
or...
not at all. Yeah, I agree. So I went a little bit off my point there by going off on how much like wizardry stuff doesn't really catch my attention. But what I do want to say is I thought it was really cool the way that they told this story that was very. It had a female lead. Wanda is
female showrunner.
Female showrunner, female lead, and it shows. Because like the fact that Agatha, the sort of the big bad, it was also a woman. Like and the way that they told those stories from a female perspective, the way that my wife was saying this, that Wanda is a mother, and it's not super often that we have a woman who is the protagonist who is a mother and looking at parenthood from her perspective rather than from like either a joint perspective or in worst case just the husband's perspective, just the father's perspective.
Mm-hmm.
It's not super often that you have a show like that where the mother is the main character and like motherhood is shown the way it was and that she had as much agency as she did. With all of those factors, being a mother, having a character who is all of those things and has as much agency as she does, where she is pulling the strings behind the whole thing, that doesn't happen very often. And that's actually one of the things that captivated Marissa's imagination as much as it did, and made her such a fan to the point where she was looking at the subreddit, looking at WandaVision TikTok, looking at the memes on Instagram and Twitter and stuff, was because she felt that she could relate to it in a way that she couldn't relate to lots of other things. And that comes back to what you and I have talked about many, many times, which is if the stories are good, it doesn't matter if they wear capes or not. Like, I don't care if they wear capes or not. I like that they're superheroes. I like that they have powers. I like that they have whatever. I like those things. Those are things that I'm drawn to. But if the story is compelling and relatable and of the times, it's going to transcend the genre. Even if someone like my wife, who doesn't really care about superheroes and powers and costumes and stuff, she sort of looked past that stuff to enjoy the show because the characters and the story and the mystery around it were so compelling.
I actually have a question concerning that, because the final episode, apart from a few of its quieter moments and everything like that, was very much like superhero fare.
It was.
Agatha and Scarlet Witch are battling in the sky. She gets a cool new costume, which finally, because she really needed it. She needed the upgrade, and she's got the crown, and it's awesome. It looks so good. I'm so excited. Like, did she care about that last episode the way that she cared about the first 8?
She cried.
Wow.
She cried because she got so invested in Wanda and Vision and their love story that she was and she's walking in the room right now. But she cried at the finale episode because you ratted me out. Sorry. So people are going to hear that this thing and she cried at the finale episode because it was so compelling. It doesn't matter any by the time we gotten that many episodes in, none of the costumes and the powers and the crown and all that stuff, none of it really mattered because these were just characters. These were just people, essentially.
Right.
They were just like our friends who had followed on this journey, and she had empathy for Wanda, for the horrible things that she was doing, but for the reasons that she did them for. Many of us can put ourselves in that position. If wow, if it was for someone that I really loved, would I do something questionable for somebody that I love? Maybe I would in some scenarios. It's sort of a moral gray area, moral quandary that you ask yourself. Maybe you wouldn't actually do what Wanda did, but you can relate maybe I would do something that I wouldn't have otherwise done for love,
Right. To go back to the philosophy thing, it's a little bit of the train track thing, all right, so
yes,
there's
the trolley problem.
The trolley problem. It's a bit what's the greater good here? Is it for me? Is it for them? It's for this. That's basically what Wanda's doing this whole time.
Yeah.
And that's what's so that was so compelling about the show. Just as a comic fan, I talked about the Wanda's costume, which was excellent. I thought Agatha's end costume was a great blend of her late 19th century like brooch outfit slash like witch's robes, which was very cool. White Vision, I got so excited because that's what the Vision I grew up with as a kid. I remember like the Avengers scroll game where you could play Captain America or Iron Man or Hawkeye or Vision. It was White Vision. That was my first introduction to the character. It was so fun to see that. And finally, the MCU connection that I think is the same. I haven't seen any online or anything, so maybe somebody can tell me. The cabin that Wanda's in at the very end, that's the one that Bruce Banner goes to at the end of Incredible Hulk, like where he learns to like connect himself with the Hulk and be one person. Edward Norton, the Edward Norton.
Yeah,
film.
yeah. But wait, okay, I had read that was supposed to be Sokovia. Did he go to Sokovia at the end of Incredible Hulk?
It doesn't. I think he goes to Canada, but it doesn't say where that.
It doesn't say
is.
where. It doesn't say where. I guess that was speculation.
It could very well they use the same thing, and we're supposed to think it's two different ones. I could be wrong. I think it's the same one. The scenery looks very familiar to me, and so I read that as more like, oh, Avengers. It's like an Avengers hideaway cabin,
right?
It's like,
right.
You know, like it's one that Bruce had, and he's like, once he joined the Avengers, he's like, by the way, I have this cabin in the middle of nowhere. If anybody needs to use it as an escape, like we have a retreat house now. That was kind of just my little read on it.
No, that's cool. I did not even think of it that way. That's an interesting thought that I did not entertain. I had read in some Screen Rant or somewhere someone saying like, oh, so she retreated to Sokovia, and I was like, oh, okay, I guess that's where that was. And I just took that for granted after I read that, but now I'm like, oh, maybe it was.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure.
That's
pretty
really
sure it's the same
interesting.
place.
That's really cool.
And I love that, you know, we hear the cries of her kids while she's in her astral form, right? So she's advanced so far in, you know, from the end of, you know, from the between the credits of each thing, you know, and you hear the cries of her kids. So Doctor Strange 2, hop through the multiverse, here we come. Going to find some kids. And I love that.
This was a really good like multi-episode setup for Multiverse of Madness.
Yeah, absolutely. Great tease. It was enough to be like, yes, I mean, and I'm so glad I know that's kind of what, like, we know that her story's getting picked up in Doctor Strange 2. Feige and Marvel have like always said like, this is where she's going to be. She's a major player after this, blah, blah, blah. So I'm excited to get down. Get down with the Doctor Strange 2 and more Wanda. Vision's still out there, which makes me so excited. Paul Bettany did an interview, and he was like, I love Vision. Like, yes, please, more. Like, I'll definitely do more.
Yeah, and I'll definitely come back and die again.
Yeah. He's like, actually, he was like, please don't kill me again, but I would
Fourth
definitely
time's the charm.
That's right. But, you know, potentially Vision being out there in the world with Vision 2.0, with Vision's memories, but not his empathy, that can potentially be quite dangerous. You know, he has all the ideas and the memories of love and but he also has memories of destruction and hate and violence and death. So it could get dicey.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's they have set up some really cool stuff, including in the post-credits scenes of the finale. I had to explain to my wife what Skrulls were. That was cool.
Right. It was cool. That's right. We haven't even talked about Monica, actually.
No.
Monica, I thought Monica she grabbed my attention right from the start.
Yeah.
And I loved that. In the comics, she becomes Photon, I think her name is. She's the Captain Marvel. She's another Captain Marvel at one point, you know, and I know her storyline is getting picked up in Captain Marvel 2. So, you know, and then I would assume Secret Invasion at some point, right? Because we know that's coming, and Skrulls are here. So that was fun, and I like that the amount of empathy that she had for Wanda when nobody else did. I thought that was important. She understood what grief is and what that means, and her grief is doubled. It's what so many people had to go through. Like she's like watching her mom die in struggle. She disappears, come back to only find she missed out on her mom's death and everything. You know, like for some like that, that's tragic. It's truly
tragic. It is. She is the only person in this show who really, I think, can wrap her mind around Wanda's grief. And it is like grief as a theme in this show, grief and the lengths that it will make you go or can make you go. And Wanda and Monica are like the two different extremes of that, where Wanda goes into complete denial, like, I'm going to construct an entire world where this horrible thing never happened, to the point where in episode 2, is it, at the end, when she sees the beekeeper, she goes, no, and rewinds things, right? Like, she is...
That's right.
Even when she doesn't yet know exactly what's going on, she's so determined to not let sadness, grief befall her, that she prevents anything from letting that happen. Where Monica takes the completely opposite way, the completely opposite path, and has empathy for Wanda. She processes the sadness of losing her mother, and tries to do something good with that energy instead of retreating into like denial.
That's right. You basically see both of them go through the 5 stages of grief, or without, but in different ways, but their resolves even end differently. Whereas like there's the denial, and Monica's like, nope, I'm good. I'm going to go right back to work. I'm good. And Wanda's the nope, I'm not good, and I'm going to pretend like none of it's happening. And so it does spiral for both of them. And what's important about those stages of grief is that they don't have to go in the order that people like that they're presented, right? So like Wanda starts with sadness and goes to anger and then goes to denial and stuff, and Monica goes down a different path, and you see them play out those forces, but at the end they both come to a place of acceptance through each other, but like almost indirectly. And I also like that there's like community in their grief, which is also an important theme here.
Yeah,
it's great.
Yeah,
it's good. One that Wanda doesn't necessarily get, because by the end she's run away from her problems.
That's right. She's trying to bring back to life her sons who never really existed. So it's sort of this weird rabbit hole.
Okay, so here's the sons before we wrap up, because we're getting a little long. The sons are real in the way that Vision is real. She creates them. They're not actors, right? Because they disappear, right? They, like everybody else in the town just goes, "Oh, I'm back. Like I'm traumatized forever, but I'm back." The kids disappear. They don't, like Vision disappears.
Yes. So they weren't
which
kidnapped
means that
actors like the rest of them were.
That's correct.
Right.
They are manifestations that Wanda creates, but
right.
But just as Vision is created out of something, so are those kids.
Okay.
So like, because Vision's the Mind Stone that lives in Wanda, and so I love that connection too. That was a great like reason for them to even connect in some particular way. That was very good. So I think those kids at the end, she's not really trying to bring them back. I think they exist somewhere, and that's news to her, and she's got to go find out where they are.
Yes. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Absolutely. It's beautifully constructed. Honestly, we haven't even scratched the surface. We could talk more about it. There are not plans for a season 2, right? Because this is going to go.
No, it's just this one. Yeah, it's just this.
It's a shame, only in the sense that this was such a cool cultural moment. And I don't know if we'll see something quite like this. I don't think Falcon and Winter Soldier is going to have the same cultural resonance.
I don't think so either. I think we're going to go back to a more traditional Marvel formula, which is good, which is not a bad thing. It's just not going to attract the amount of people that this did. You've got your Marvel fans, your TV fans, your Disney fans, your postmodern fans. Like you've got a range here, and Falcon and Winter Soldier is just not going to hit all of those marks. Nor should we try to compare them. They're utterly different from the outset, and it's not fair to either show to be like, oh well, obviously it's the next one, so we should compare them.
That's right.
Showrunners, different characters, different plots. Like, yes, they're Marvel, but you shouldn't compare Iron Man 2 to Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2.
No.
They're two different subgenres within the superhero genre.
That's
not
right.
It's not fair. Yeah.
I could not have said it better. Could not have said it better myself. That's very well put. We shouldn't and we can't try to compare them. They're going to be too vastly different to do that. But all I meant in bringing that up, just to sort of bring us home here, is just that I don't think this will have the same mass appeal. I don't think Falcon and Winter Soldier will have the same mass appeal. And I don't know if we'll see, I wonder if we'll see something that has the same mass appeal this show, I almost said film, this show has had over the last couple of months. I hope that we will, and I think that if we do, it probably will be something we see from Disney Plus, frankly. The Mandalorian kind of has a similar mass appeal, broader appeal. So in a sense, this is the second time they've done it. But I hope we continue to see shows like this that cut across, and you don't have to be a fan of the genre or of the franchise to appreciate and understand them. I love this widening of the tent where it's like, yeah, there's cool stuff happening here. Come on in and like check it out. And maybe some people will find themselves pulled into like, okay, what is a Skrull, and what happened, and what's the blip? What happened in Endgame and Infinity War? Like maybe some people will get pulled in and become fans of the lore, and maybe some people won't, and that's fine. But I find it really, really exciting. It's an exciting time to be like into this stuff and to get to share it with people who wouldn't otherwise be.
Yep. Yeah, I completely agree with you. And I think that's a great place to end. So why don't you tell us where the people can find us?
You can find us at beerwithgeeks.com. That's our home on the internet. That is where all things happen. That's where you're going to find all of our episodes. You're going to find all of our show notes, the show notes for this episode. I try to capture as much as we're talking, as many of the references we're making and stuff. I try to capture that stuff in the show notes so you can sort of figure out what the heck we're saying. If you want to donate at Thought Bubble Audio on Patreon, patreon.com/thoughtbubbleaudio. We have a donate link right there on beerwithgeeks.com. You can find the Thought Bubble Audio Network at thoughtbubbleaudio.com. That's all of our shows, including Academy Rewind and The Gospel According to Lucas, where Tim and I talk about Star Wars and Christianity. It's we have a lot of different shows at thoughtbubbleaudio.com, so check that out. And if you like this conversation, chances are you're going to find other conversations that you like on our other shows. You can rate and review us on Apple Podcasts, Overcast, Spotify, Stitcher, anywhere you find your podcast, you will find Beer with Geeks. And you can email us at beerwithgeeks@gmail.com for topic suggestions or feedback or corrections on something wrong that I said, or you can tweet us at Beer with Geeks for the same reasons. Tim, I think that's going to bring us home.
Frank, always a pleasure. And until next time,
cheers.